Hello and welcome to Eco Girl in a Modern World. My name is Shelly and this channel is dedicated to talking about ways to be more environmentally friendly in a modern context. As I promised, we're doing another video to kind of try to get caught up. So this will be one additional one, and then the next one we'll post will be 2 weeks after this. But I decided to go ahead and talk about a topic that we haven't talked too much about here on the channel, and that is hobbies. And what got me thinking about hobbies is, again, I went on a trip to go see a family member because of a loss in the family. And I noticed that, during times like that, when you're doing a lot of difficult things, you're filling out paperwork, you're dealing with difficult emotions, sometimes it is good to break those tasks into manageable pieces. And one thing that I always feel like is a good outlet when you are either really stressed out from work or from life events or something like that is to really lose yourself into a hobby. And I'll post a few videos down below that from here on YouTube that really talk about it well. Hobbies have been around for millennia, and they're very, very positive for several reasons. First off, it helps you learn a skill outside of what you do, your 9 to 5. So, and hobbies tend to be something that you enjoy doing, right? So it's a talent or skill that you kind of develop outside of what you do for your 9 to 5, right? The other thing is that hobbies tend to also turn into side hustles, right? They can be a second way to earn income. And you'll see in some of the videos that I post below, that was been very helpful during really tumultuous times in world history. During times of war or during times of recession or depression, a lot of people got by with selling selling what they did as a hobby. Also, you'll see that quite a few entrepreneurs, some of the big CEOs that you hear about, like Henry Hines, or a lot of them created their products or built their empires based on something that they did as a side job before they made it to the big time, right? So hobbies are very important things. And I decided, again, it's been a challenging year for myself. So I decided to talk about some of the hobbies that I do, also some of the hobbies that can be a little bit more green, or how you can make those hobbies more green. And there's another video that I'm going to post down below that I watched recently that was really good about talking about doing more environmentally friendly things, because it is difficult. A lot of crafts, like the crafts industry is the #1 type of kind of pollution, to be honest. I mean, a lot of paints, a lot of tapes, a lot of brushes cause a lot of waste in the world. So you do have to take that into consideration. But the other thing is, again, we're eco girl in a modern world. Doing something for fun, doing something that makes you happy. That I always say, a hobby, it's a good hobby when you lose track of time, when you kind of take yourself out of your own world, and you lose track of time and what you're doing, what you're creating. That is very healthy for you. And again, there's you always have to exercise your body kind of 3 ways. You have to exercise your mind either by reading or writing or doing something mental. You got to exercise your body by walking, working out, or doing something physical. And I just feel like, creativity or hobbies is kind of like a mix of the both. I think it's good on a psychological and emotional place. So just like you talk about your emotions, or if you journal or do something like that, I think when you have a craft or a hobby that you're good at, that it also exercises your emotions. It lets you feel that creative side of yourself. It also gives you creative thinking, like critical thinking, because when you're starting, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, when you're starting a new hobby, or if you're if you already have a hobby that you're good at and you're perfecting your craft, that develops a skill within you, and that's a progression that really develops you creatively and emotionally and psychologically. I think it releases new endorphins and pathways in your brain, and that's always a healthy thing. So even though, I always say on this channel, well, I'm not telling you not to take up space. When you see things like the zero waste movement, unfortunately, it's a little unrealistic to be completely zero waste about something. That's just not really plausible. But what you can do is you can be conscientious about it. You can be practical about it. You don't get one of those hobbies where you need a bunch of wasteful type of supplies, and then you never use them and you just throw them away. That's the kind of waste that you want to avoid. If you have a hobby that you do and you actually use it up, wear it out, or try to recycle things, that's the best way to be green and still, again, take up space. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And again, I'll post a few great videos down below that also talk about other ways to be green with it, because you'll notice that a lot of environmentalists are very creative. All the channels that I follow, they do a lot of different crafts. And when you think about it, crafts, inks and paints and glitter, and that's not always the most environmentally friendly stuff. So we're going to jump into it. Another video that I watched that really got me thinking about this is that, I watched the YouTube channel Kathleen Illustrated, and she had a great video that talked about using beads to create a Labubu. And I know the Labubu thing has been crazy. It's those little blind boxes that, I've been posting a few videos on my social media channels talking about that. But the Labubu craze has been crazy. It's trendy, popular everywhere, and what Kathleen Illustrated did is she went ahead and tried to recreate a Labubu using plastic beads. And even though beads are plastic, and it was a great video to watch, because that plastic beads are reusable. And you see them a lot. I mean, we're at the point in the summer right now. If you've come back from summer camp, or if you have a little one who has a box full of plastic beads, you also find these very easily at the craft store. If you had used those beads for like a necklace, you can always cut the cord, take the beads off, and then reuse them. To create a Labubu or a bag charm or whatever's cool now. So that is a really good way to reuse supplies that you already have on hand. So beadwork is a really fun one, and I'll post that video down below. That was a really entertaining watch, and that's a really great way to recycle resources and to be creative with it and still be kind of following the trend. And I thought it was real cute. Kathleen was like, I've never been to summer camp, this is my outlet. So a lot of what I'm talking about here, same thing. I've went to summer camp once when I was really young, but a lot of what I do, I'm one of those persons who I do like to be busy. I like to create different things all the time, but having a hobby, I think, is very positive. It's a good thing to do. It's a good way to. I always say it's cheaper than therapy, right? The amount of money that you spend, and I know sometimes hobbies can get expensive, but even if you're dabbling to try to find which hobby would be best for you. It's always good to have one or to experiment with it. Now, some of the hobbies that I'm going to be, as we go into fall and winter, and that's another reason that hobbies might be on your mind around this time of year, at the end of summer, going into fall and winter, is because the days are going to start getting shorter. It's going to get colder out. You're not going to have as many daylight hours if you do exercise outside, or, and sometimes it's indoor hobbies or just things that you do to be creative really light that fire of creativity, especially when the days are really short. And and to be honest, I think it helps us all stay a little bit sane. If you already have the supplies in your house, you don't have to buy any more of them. it's a way for you to feel better if, you know, with world events, if everything feels chaotic in the world, you can get into your own little zone. The other thing is sometimes you can sell your wares, you know. I know as the summer comes to a close, there might not be as many farmers markets, but there's ways that you could sell your wares on Etsy or on another craft, you know, platform, or you could, you know, there are some year-round farmers markets where you could really make a little bit money on this, and that's always helpful too. It shares your craft with the world. Now, I wanted to talk about some of the hobbies that I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to try to keep it green. But I've always been an avid scrapbooker. I've scrapbooked since 2004, or 2006. It's been a while. It's been almost 20 years of it. And I know, you know, if you talk to other environmentalists, that's not always the greatest hobby in the world. The books themselves are pretty heavy. The paper, you know, when you buy colored paper, that sometimes can have toxic dyes, or dyeing is a very intensive process. But the one reason that I really do love scrapbooks is because I like to journal my life. That's another way that I kind of find joy, especially if times are tough. I can always look back to happy moments in my life. It also lets me look back at achievements in my life, and there's a word for it, and I'll put it up on the screen. But when you keep all of the mementos, you know, like the ticket stubs, or, you know, the pictures, or the little, you know, keychains, instead of throwing all of this stuff right into the trash, keeping it kind of preserves the memory. And to be honest, the books, they do take up quite a bit of space, but they don't take up as much space as keeping all of the momentums. You know, a lot of times if you get a plush, you keep the plush because of the memory of it. If you scrapbook a picture of what you experienced, it's in a flat volume that you can keep in reference. And of course, I've always tried to think of other ways to be more green with it. I am going to dedicate a video to talking about the biodegradability of printed photos. Photos have gotten better. You know, if you have the traditionally developed photos, those still have a lot of chemicals in them. But the way that photos are printed today are actually pretty good. The other thing is the end life. You know, if you have a bunch of extra photos, you can shred it up and it can become, you know, like packaging for shipping and other things like that. But I am gonna in the future do a video that talks about how photos are printed, how wasteful it is, like, okay, you know, what does the ink, you know, what waste does the ink produce, and how biodegradable they are at their end life. So, and I'll try to talk about the dyes in paper too. Now, as far as tape goes, I used to have like big tape dispensers in here. A lot of dispensers that you find kind of look like this, and when you run out of the tape, you have this left over, and I always felt like this was just so wasteful. It's like, it's you know, once the tape is all used up, it's not like, I've tried sending the little cartridges back to Tombow, and when you do that, they will send you replacements, but I don't think they have a really good recycling program. Now, one thing that I've switched to is so I have this base dispenser, and I can take, just like any dispenser, I can take this tape out, and 3M sells in boxes of 2 these. They're refill cartridges, and the box itself is just papers, cardboard, so this can be recycled, and then inside is the replacement roll. And what happens is once I use up the entire roll, there's just a plastic ring that is left over. Now, I have emailed 3M to talk about recycling. I've also contacted TerraCycle to see if there was a way to recycle it, but you know, nowadays with the cost of importing plastic, you know, virgin plastic, if 3M had a recycling program, I've emailed them and they say they don't as of right now. But if somebody mailed you back the center plastic ring, that would be so easy to recycle. You pretty much would just clean it with a soap and then put it. It's the exact same size and make that you need. You don't need to melt it down. You don't need to reform it, and just put it back into more rings. And I feel like this would be the best recycling option. So I've been doing this with my tape just because it makes it easy for me to dispense, and I think that's the future of trying to keep everything in the cycle with as little recycling as needed, because plastic really doesn't, the recycling of plastic is really kind of a farce. You can only recycle plastic about 6 to 7 times at most before you, and even with each one of those incarnations, you have to add at least 30% new virgin plastic. So if you do not have to, if you can just reuse the ring at the end of its life, you don't, you just clean it and reuse it. That would be an excellent recycling program. So that's on my goal, but that's how I, tape down my pictures and do adhesives for things. Now, one other thing that I like to do is I like to sew. You've probably seen posts on my social media pages. I'm not terribly good at sewing. Like I have not, up until now, I have not endeavored to do anything like a garment. I'm aspiring to do that. It's just what I'm very, very good at is I'm good at making lined drawstring bags, and they're very imperfect. Like I don't measure them. I don't do an exact measurement. I don't even really iron it or anything like that. But I like to pick out, I guess it's the Libra in me, I like to pick out coordinating colors to the bag. I like to do drawstring bags for my purses. I love my purses. I have a pretty extensive collection of purses. That's just my vice. Some people are shoe people. Some people are, buy a lot of makeup or love their, I tend to be, I'm like a purse and perfume and jewelry person. And I know that's, again, eco girl in a modern world, but for my purses, I have some nice ones. Most of them are vintage, and the other thing about my purses and my jewelry is that I buy it secondhand, and it's such high quality. I have some beautiful purses that are vintage, and they're in really good quality, and I don't like to just stuff them into my closet. I like to put them in their own dust bags, and by me picking out the material and making the dust bags, I can know at a glance, because I can see the pattern of the bag, and the pattern of the bag coordinates with the purse. I know which purse is which from a glance, and it still protects the purse inside. And so I love to do that, and I've gotten into the habit of it. So sewing is very relaxing to me. I'll say this, with scrapbooking, I can scrapbook every single night and it's always relaxing. I could scrapbook every night of the year and be content. Sewing is not so much. Sometimes I can start to feel like it's a little bit of a task. And of course, when you're doing a hobby, you never want to get in that zone. It should always be enjoyable for you. But what I like to do, the other thing is, it's a little bit of effort to pull out the sewing machine. But, every 2 to 3 weeks, or, if I get a new bag, or I just, I have a to-do list of sewing. Same thing if I have to hem a pair of pants or just do a simple job, like the lining for my laundry hamper, I need to sew it up. It's been ripped for a while, so the next time I sew some bags, I'm going to fix that too. But sewing can be very, very relaxing. You just put on some music or put on a TV show behind you, and I get some beautiful bags out of it. Now, admittedly, I sometimes buy new material, because I want, of course, I want the material to coordinate. I do always make sure that it's 100% cotton or linen. I know that's not always the best thing, because again, we're going to have future videos that talk about the dyes that go into this. It could be all natural fabric, but the dyes can still be pretty toxic. But of course, I've also made bags from upcycled materials. One of my favorite purses I put into, I turned an old pair of jeans, like just a pant. I had a pair of ripped jeans that I wore to death. And I took the pant leg and I turned it into a drawstring bag. So you can always upcycle. I've got plenty of pajama bottoms that I've just worn to pieces and that I'm going to be reusing that material. And actually just the other day, my mom sent me some extra material that she had, and that just brings a little bit of sunshine to the day. I know that Joann Fabrics has just unfortunately gone out of business, and that was a big retailer of material. But the good news is that Michael's Craft Store has actually gained the contracts with the sellers, with the suppliers of the material that used to sell to Joann's. So you're going to start seeing the same quality of material that you saw at Joann Fabrics in Michael's Craft Store. So, that just kind of brings a little bit less gloom and doom. It feels like there's a lot of changes going on in the world. And of course, you can always use your imagination, upcycle, reuse. I follow a lot of channels on Facebook, threads on Facebook that talk about people turning old sheets into clothes, and how do I upcycle jeans into bags, and it just gets very creative and it's very inspirational. And I am hoping to branch out a little bit with my sewing skills, maybe actually do like a simple project. I have to admit, I'm a little intimidated on the sewing side just because it's difficult. You have to keep material, in the right proportions, and I'm always afraid of messing that up. I don't have that problem when I'm taping down pictures or cutting paper, right? Now, another project that I'm looking to do, and my goodness, I feel like this year I'm just being a little creative little whirlwind tornado. I did buy I tried crocheting once a long time ago. I actually crocheted a jacket, and it turned out really wonky. It turned out really bad. But that's the beauty of hobbies, is that you are supposed to screw up. Screwing up is how you learn, and it's not even screwing up. It's how you learn, right? You make mistakes, you learn by doing. And I know a lot of people who love to crochet. They just have it down so to a science. But what I decided to do is that there's a company called Woobles, and it's cute. It's just it's a short project. They give you the portioned out amount of yarn, and you crochet it. It doesn't take long. I think it takes no less than like 5 hours if you go continuously at it, and it's a good introductory way to learn how to crochet correctly, and it gives you the nice reward of a little wooble. The other thing is the crochet hook is in theme with the thing, and what I did is I did buy it because it just seems like a nice starter project. It doesn't give you don't have to buy a whole ball of yarn. I don't have a lot of waste left over, and I did decide to go ahead and do Pac-Man, and I did the orange ghost, and the orange ghost's name is Clyde. And what it is if you read the history of Pac-Man, there are 4 ghosts, Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde. And what it is that each of the ghosts have different actions. Like Inky, I think, can just go left and right, and then Blinky can just do go around corners, and then Pinky. And what it is that each of the 3 other ghosts are very predictable in their actions, but Clyde can do any one of those 3 patterns in any order that he chooses. He's basically the wild card. So I respect Clyde. I always root for Pac-Man and Mrs. Pac-Man to win, of course, because you're playing as them. But, I always just think, in a world full of Inkys, you want to be a Clyde. So I'm going to try to get around to that. That's probably going to be a project I get to closer to winter time. When I'm stuck indoors with snow outside, I'll probably try to do that, and that'll be a quick project. Another one is cross stitch, and actually cross stitch is kind of a little bit of an offshoot from, it was an inspiration from my scrapbooking. While I was scrapbooking, I started watching a channel called Jennifer McGuire Ink, and she makes cards, and she does it with stamps and inks, and it's amazing and die cuts, and it's amazing how card making really ties into scrapbooking. It is, they're both paper craft. So I really did. I can make cards, and it's nice because I can use the same materials. I can use the same cardstock that I have for scrapbooking. I can easily make a card, or I can embellish one of my existing 12 by 12 scrapbook pages using the materials, the stamping, the die cutting, the techniques from card making. So yes, I do have stamps, but it's nice because it's not a waste. The stamps that I have, I really love. If I ever really wanted to, if I gave up card making completely, I could sell the stamps, and believe me, there's a few rare ones that if I went on eBay, all hobbies kind of go in and out of popularity, but you'll see that there are you know, if you are a card maker, you're a card maker. If you are a scrapbooker, you're a scrapbooker. And it doesn't matter if it's in vogue or not, you know, you still do what you love to do. And there's still a lot of card makers out there that will, you know, be looking online. So it is helpful. Again, you know, that's the best case scenario. Just like with your clothes, you know, you want to keep things in the cycle. If you're no longer doing that hobby, you might be able to recoup money. And also, you know, if supplies for your hobby sell in the secondhand market, that's a good sign that you're keeping it. That's not going into a landfill. If someone's dropping money to buy the same, you know, stamp set or supplies that you use, that's a good sign that you're keeping it in the loop. And so that's always a good thing. But in that vein, Jennifer McGuire Inc. is a channel that talks about card making. But one thing that she's talked about, and this is actually exactly what we're talking about here, is that she even said that sometimes she will kind of do the dance with depression. You know, she'll have blue moments of feeling kind of blue, and that she releases stress by doing cross stitch. And believe it or not, you know, you don't have to just do cross stitch on material. You can do cross stitch on paper. So she has a few videos that talk about this very openly, about how, you know, she does cross stitching for stress relief and to just feel better emotionally. But she also, there are stamps that you can get for cards that help you, that either perforate the card where you can actually do cross stitch on a card, or of course you can do cross stitch on material. And cross stitch, this would be a brand new hobby to me. This is one that I've never tried before. Everything else I've dabbled in. But one thing that I am going to do is I had been inspired by some historical fashion, in particularly the House of Worth. And there is a pattern that I want to replicate. And call me crazy. And again, I was inspired by Kathleen Illustrated. She does a lot of creative projects with clothing, but I want to endeavor to do a House of Worth pattern from a vintage gown onto a jacket. And this is also something that I haven't done a fall winter fashion trends video yet, but that's coming. But I do predict, and this is kind of a dark horse trend, is that satin or varsity jackets are very popular, you know, like the varsity, you know, almost like, you know, the Grease Pink Ladies jackets have been very kind of in vogue. And what I want to do is, I found this beautiful one secondhand off of eBay. This was like $30 and it fits perfectly. I'm not wearing it right now, but I want to embroider something on the back. And again, it's going to be a House of Worth pattern. And so I've got that beautiful white satin, and then this is silk. This is not polyester, this is silk, and it feels amazing. And then I've got some gold thread. Now, of course, what I do need to do though is I've bought some books, and I'm gonna practice a lot on, you know, with smaller projects to get practice before I go big, before I don't want to jump right into the big project and then make a mistake. I know that's how, again, I'm a hypocrite, that's how we learn, but I am gonna just try to get, you know, some trial and error with some test swatches. And I have a hoop that I can use, an embroidery hoop. And the video that I post below talks a lot about that too, how you can find a lot of the materials that you need at thrift stores. I've seen embroidery hoops at thrift stores, or of course, you know, a lot of those hoops are wood with metal, you know, so you don't have to, you know, if you buy it from a craft store, it's probably not going to be the most wasteful piece of equipment that you'd ever use. So that's another project that I have slated for this winter. I'm going to be real excited. I have to learn a few techniques on how to probably do a little swatching with it first, and definitely, well, that's not entirely true. I also got inspiration to do the embroidery because this last winter, I sewed a stocking for my cat, Max. And oh, you know, and I remember I used to, when I took home economics in high school, I had a really sweet teacher who taught us all of the different stitches. Those weren't technically embroidery stitches, but they were just the regular menting stitches, which are pretty similar. But what I did when I made the stocking for Max, it was something called a blanket stitch, and I just feel like just like Jennifer McGuire said, it's very relaxing when you sit down, just like crocheting or any of this. It's always very relaxing to sit, and once you get into a groove with it, I think once I've gotten into a groove and practice with the different stitches, I'll be ready to do the real thing. And it's a pretty simple pattern, but you know, again, I want to practice on swatches before I jump in, but I am looking forward to that. Now, just a few other things that you can do is you could always do woodwork. I know, you know, I have friends whose husbands make cabinets, makes tables. The store down the road from me they sell planks of reclaimed wood. Like when they cut down an old tree, they take they cut it into slabs, and you know, you can make bookshelves out of that. You can make tabletops out of that. Woodwork is something that can absolutely be a hobby. Another hobby that's a big one is Mosaic. I actually found this at a thrift store for like $3.99, and all it is a piece of wood with feet that has it's like leftover tiles. And I know you can fill in the gaps with grout. And I know this is technically supposed to be a trivet, but I use it to set other things. I use this a lot. And I just think, I actually have a side table that I have that I might, later on, try my hand at Mosaic. Again, it's a good way to use leftover tile. There's tile cutters where if something's not the right size, you can actually, kind of cut it and break it. And then you could, again, fill in the difference, fill in the middle with grout. And that makes for a beautiful kind of accent. And again, if that's something you're good at. Another thing is framing. This was something that I dabbled in a lot. I learned how to professionally frame pictures, so I actually became pretty good at it. There's a lot more math into that. You have to kind of have a little bit, like a 1/4 of a centimeter overlap with mats, and you have to measure how much the frame is going to be. And I learned how to wire up the back so pictures hang evenly. But there's a lot of places where you can buy your frame, and if you have a poster or something that you really like, you can try to frame it yourself. Either that, or with all of these hobbies, if you can find someone to learn from, that's another thing that would be really amazing. I was just talking to my friend yesterday, and she had mentioned that I had been thinking about learning how to plant terrariums. Those are the glass bowls with the different type of plant life. Some terrariums are corked where there's no air in them. Some of them are open air, but she actually knows someone who does this. They just know how to do it. And so I might, I don't think that's going to be a this year project, but maybe in the spring. And that's so easy to do. You can go to the thrift store and find beautiful glass bowls to use, wash them, get them ready, and then I would really love to learn the layers of how to build a terrarium with native, plant life that's native to my state. So that might be something that you might learn how to do. And of course, if you become really good at that, that is something that you could sell. You could take that to a farmer's market, and that's really beautiful. That takes skill to know how the different plants work together, and how they create symbiotic relationships in their own little biospheres. That's a very green hobby to have. And then the last thing, of course, is a very popular one, is painting. You know, I have, you see behind me, I have quite a few watercolors. I have a friend who's a very talented watercolor artist. I bought a book on how to do it, but I have a glass pen, and I was, you know, wondering if I could kind of do a hybrid of learning how to, you know, line with the glass pen and then maybe use a water brush to kind of do kind of a loose watercolor, or to do kind of miniature watercolor, you know. And again, this is just to release, it's to get the wiggles out, you know, let you escape for a little while. But if you don't want to do more of a watercolor art, another thing is just regular painting. And if you feel kind of intimidated by it, you could start with a paint by numbers kit. And that is actually behind me. I bought one, and again, I'm probably going to be doing that towards winter. But paint by numbers is very relaxing. The kit that I got was just like $35, and it's a peony. I love peonies; they're my favorite flower. But especially the really beautiful pink ones, they just smell amazing. It's this beautiful picture of a woman's face with almost like a hair full of peonies. That project probably wouldn't take me very long to do, but of course, you know, it does come in the plastic containers of the paint. But the nice thing is you kind of use up all of the paint. If you have any left over, you could probably keep it for another project. And you know, I have paint brushes, so it probably would be pretty low waste. So these are just a few ideas. I know there's kind of quizzes that you could take, or you could kind of try to think about, okay, what would be a good, you know, what are some of the things that I like to do? If you enjoy photography, you know, you might like framing, you might like scrapbooking. If you enjoy papercraft or journaling, you know, scrapbooking is great for journaling too, because you can actually, you know, you can actually make, you know, journal entries and keep the little mementos. But you know, and then there's so many wonderful other hobbies that are out there that you could just look into. So I know this sounds crazy. I know it sounds like, wow, she's going in like 12 different directions, but it is really just, it's a nice thing to do. It's a way to develop your skill at something. As long as you're using up and wearing out and not, you know, not causing a lot of waste, not causing anything that needs to be thrown into the trash or washed down the drain or something like that. And again, as we do each of these projects, that's the most important thing. You know, being green does not mean that you're not allowed to take up space. You can absolutely take up space. Just, you know, do it in a thoughtful manner. You know, think about the chemicals, think about, you know, what's going into the ground, what's going into the water, and are you trying to put it back into the circle, you know? So I hope maybe this video gave you some inspiration. Is there a hobby that you're good at? Is there a hobby that you've thought about trying? How would you make that green, or how would you make that the most productive use of the materials involved? And so we'll go ahead and wrap on that note. If there's any other things that you want us to talk about, please do. In the next coming weeks, we're going to be talking about additional topics. We will be doing a fall fashion video, you know, how to stock up without being wasteful. And if you like what you see here on this channel, I would be very honored if you'd like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.